Hey everybody, um, Coach Kurt here, Elvis Kelly Fight Team. I just got back from Water and Steel. Um, I'm a little, I'm exhausted. I'm, I'm exhausted. So this is totally a impromptu episode, just more or less like my own thoughts, trying to decompress this weekend and my life's choices here in I guess the near future the near future when it comes to my journey as a martial artist. I don't want to say professional martial artist because I'm not any longer. But as a martial artist in general, a Filipino martial arts nerd. And actually, what I bring to this community, I guess, at this point, because I don't teach anything necessarily anymore. It's kind of not my goal, not my intention, not for not for a commercial aspect at least. I'm not here to teach people for income because I no longer need to do martial arts as a source of income. I mean, I'm happy to do it for private lessons and whatnot, but reality is my martial arts journey, as it should have always been, is for me. And where it has led me thus far in this 5 year journey since shutting down the gym, um, yeah, it took me a long time to kind of come to this place. And so let's back up a little bit. So where I'm at now is, yeah, 2019 was a rough year. I'll just put it that way. 2019 was the culmination of the end for me and the gym with my long-standing opioid addiction, my long-standing mental health and behavioral health issues, my long-standing instability as a human being and as a garbage person who was lying to himself and everybody around him when dealing with my own issues, whilst trying to juggle a gym and be mediocre at many things while projecting and displacing a lot of my issues and trying to figure out an identity after leaving the military, after doing many other things, just trying to figure out what I was going to do. So I encased it in martial arts. I encased it because that's what I knew, and it's what I did, and since I was no longer in the military. So the gym did its thing, and then COVID hit, the pandemic, and I was finally able to go down to the to GM Bobby Tabuada's Blintwalk West Coast camp there at in Bellevue, actually at Guru Turu Crew Watch, basically just at over at Belton's gym. I'm talking about Belton Lupus, my good friend. And for those who don't know that story, I actually met Belton on a podcast. It was through Jake Brosnan on the Martial Media podcast, and it was about 2018. And he and I originally had planned. We were talking about becoming an affiliate program. I was going to be an affiliate gym up here in Homer, and mainly for the fight team, so for Muay Thai, and of course with NSI, Blintwalk, and potentially PTK. So that was the goal and that was the plan. But life, the universe, and my issues had other says in that. So rolling the clock forward now, it's taken me a while to get there, but I'm finally there. I am finally um, free of the burden of the business, so to speak, because in a lot of ways it was a burden, but a necessary burden to get me to this point where I'm at now, free of that, and actually returning back to what martial arts should be. And martial arts is a journey for an individual and not for anybody else necessarily. Now, I talk about why we fight often, as in the reasons why we fight is based in love, and as much as it's based in love for the love of others, it's based upon our love because we love what we do and we love the martial arts. And so, as I meander back to this, I love the martial arts and I found the love for it again. And I'm doing that by way, of course, with the current journey that I'm on. So, long story short, I finally made it down to the Water and Steel camp, hosted there by Datu Kelly Worden, the one and only Datu Kelly Worden, the original. And for those who don't know who Datu Kelly Worden is, he is GM Remy Presas' first Datu. He's the first American Datu, and he's been, what is the best way to describe? Datu Kelly Worden, for those who don't know him. One of the things that I would describe him as, because the thing that I appreciate about him overall is his candor, his stories, and his ability to link the martial arts together in such a manner that putting into context for real world application for the combat aspect, but also like putting it all together for the sake of for the individual process through the martial arts. Because again, fighting is really easy, but it's not simple. I say it's easy because the human frame is a, as much as it's complex, the human frame, exploiting it, destroying it, fighting it, and killing it, got figured out a long time ago. What is not easy, or what is not easy about fighting the human frame is all that dealing with the emotional side, dealing with the psychology, dealing with like the willingness to do violence and putting it into proper context, or to use a Bruce Lee term, the emotional content. And for an individual such as Datu Kelly Worden, he's able to bring the physical martial aspects to and bring forth the emotional content because he's got the context of real world violence. And those stories are important. And what's and the Water and Steel camp has been going on for, I think, I mean, this was the 43rd annual camp. So it is the longest running martial arts camp in the nation. And that alone speaks on itself as to its quality and its value. And for the people who come in and out of that community, who stick around in that community, but still, that camp touches a lot of lives and has done a lot of good. And that community itself has done a lot of good within itself, and just for the overall growth of martial arts in general. And a lot of that comes from like having those honest conversations about what people can do in the capacity of martial arts and violence, but also in the growth and development as human beings. And again, that comes from actual content, actual context of combat. And so, like, for people who don't know, I mean, Dr. Kelly Worden, he was a combatives instructor for the First Special Forces Group. And the guys that are underneath his leadership as other instructors, I mean, you got force protection specialists, you have firearms specialists, you have combat skill set coaches, you have combat sports coaches, you have people who are the instructors that are going to be instructing other instructors in their areas of expertise. So again, these are the who's who in the industry, so to speak. But it's more than just that. This is what we talk about, like a tribal group of excellence that, and I mean, using a bunch of other metaphors like iron sharpens iron, but the men and women that are part of this community, I mean, it is a tribe that is focused on the growth of the tribe, not only in their physical martial prowess, because that's what helps protect the tribe, that's what helps maintain their sense of identity, freedom, and liberty. But also, this tribe builds like some serious family bonds. One of the things that I've always appreciated is, and looking at a martial arts community, is look how they treat those who are not in that community, as like how welcoming they are into it. Because at this camp, the barrier to entry is really interesting because you got some hard hitting um, prime fighters and combatives people, and you had some very beginning, very basic people who have never actually done martial arts, and also you had children running around, which was probably is actually my favorite part. Is there was children. One of the instructors had their dog with them. I mean, it was a family environment. This is again tribal knowledge, tribal wisdom. And the tribe comes together to do the training, share the meals, and share the stories. And with that collective good, they become better. And that right there is often lost. And I mean, you see it some sectors, but this year, as I've gotten more involved with Bull and Talk, and now as I've gotten more involved, finally gotten involved officially with Water and Steel, it's reinforcing that tribal mentality for a common purpose. And it's not just because we're bonding via trauma and shared suffering, like in the case of the military, where that community is created because You're all there because you're in the unit and you deal with what the unit has to deal with, and you don't really have a choice. But the situation and the shared suffering and the shared circumstance bonds you together. But in the case, and that's based upon a professional choice. Now, martial arts can be a professional choice, of course, but again, the shared circumstance of the love of the martial arts, the love at getting better at the martial arts, so we can teach other people to love the martial arts, so they can maintain their freedom, liberty, and personal expression to defend those who they love. They do it by promoting the love of the martial arts. And it sounds very esoteric and it sounds very emotionally driven, as often my conversations are, because the fact is, trying to rationalize this life of violence, because a martial artist as an individual dedicated to a life of violence, skillful violence. Let's not mince words about that. Martial arts at its core has to deal with violence. Now, there is the moral high ground of violence that keeps us, and that's where ethos comes into mind. It's where a positive community and culture comes into mind. That comes in the reasons as to why we fight comes to mind. But to deal with violence, you have to deal with violence. The only way to beat violence is being better at violence. As much as we try to do like the better way of talk and walk your way through it, but the fact is, when to use a phrase from Tim Larkin, when violence is the answer, it is the only answer. And so, in the case back to martial arts, we get better at martial arts so we can be better at protecting those that we love. And by showing our willingness to sacrifice for those whom we love, that's why we train in the martial arts. Now, back to like a conditional valuation standpoint, the men and women that I saw there, it's unique because having that dichotomy of different skill levels, different points of their life and experience, different points as to like why they are there, varied. But the common factors were, again, I keep going on this, they love themselves out there. Oh, there we are. There I'm back. So, um, as the ghost in the shell here, so to speak. So yeah, the people that were there, as I was saying, I mean, they're there to. It is in a lot of ways. Water and Steel was a train the trainer type camp, and I'm using that as a military terminology because that's the lexicon and language that I understand, is coming from the military. But the fact is, it is quite literally a train the trainer camp where you're learning to. For a lot of people who came to that camp, a lot of the professional martial arts there were, again, professional combat sports coaches, and there was a lot of LEO, and there was a lot of soldiers, and of course there was executive protection, people who are professionally having to deal with violence from the legal standpoint, from being legally qualified to do so and legally responsible to do so because they have the authority due to an oath. And with that, it's just it is incredible to the level of intellect. And I'm talking about my fatigue. I'll go back to that point, but my fatigue from this weekend. I am physically exhausted because I mean we were banging it out there for all day there in the sun and the outside and putting in work. But it's not so much like the physical fatigue of I got beat up because I didn't get beat up, but I put in work. But really, my fatigue is intellectual fatigue. There was so much great information coming at me, and so much great information for me to process and to understand, and like to explain the different viewpoints as to how and why, and the approach as to what to do, how and why. Is I haven't been around that level of martial intellect in a very long time, and it was very refreshing to be around such high quality individuals that were so. I mean, just beyond their physical craft, the intellectual craft of the individuals at this camp is something that everybody should at least once in their life go experience, if not multiple times, because it's this idea that they are a collective brotherhood that is trying to improve upon so everybody can improve upon and be the best version of themselves. At least that's what I was garnering, what I was gathering. So because the principle and a lot of their stuff is principles based, as fighting should be. Good fighting is principles based, and the principles talking about education of martial arts, education of combat, they talk about the principles of how to learn, to teach people how to learn, which is it's an interesting education standpoint, but to explain it again, this is a train the trainer type camp, and again, the amount of experience. I mean, Datu Kelly alone. I mean, the amount of experience that man has in life in general. I'm not just talking about like martial arts time in the gym. Hey, Datu Kelly. Yeah, I mean, Datu, you sir, your experience in just life in general, my friend, is just it's incredible. And this is the thing about how we elevate our our collective like intelligence, and it's that tribal wisdom. The to use the metaphor of how tribal training is, I want to address it as how it was for me this summer. And I'm at a beautiful point with my children as they have grown beyond the dojo because they grew up in the dojo, and grew up in the gym, but they don't remember it. So I'm at this point now, which is after I've shut down the gym, that I am back in the backyard with my training partner and a couple of my other students. But I'm also in the backyard with my son and my daughter and sharing in that collective wisdom of generational education and martial education and passing on hopefully some generational wisdom, having gone through what I've gone through, and those who share into that structure of education to my training partners, my students, and of course to my son. And having that connective lineage of information for the betterment of the group, the community, the collective is incredibly important because, like, again, talk about even something like the social issues that we deal with as a community, as a society, is there is a disconnect to that social wisdom, that life wisdom, having faced adversity and survived it. Because the beauty of having this generational mentorship, because actually, better yet, what this camp has done has demonstrates the importance of mentorship and leadership. I'll go to the aspect of leadership. Leadership isn't necessarily about giving commands. Leadership isn't necessarily about delegating authority. Those are elements of it. But leadership is often, as to my experience, has been something about sacrifice and sacrificing the ego for one to get the job done. Somebody steps up because the job is necessary to be completed, but they don't want the glory, all the they don't want all the benefit of the accomplishment. They have to get the job done. And part of that leadership in that sacrifice is the display of vulnerability and the display of explaining their truths for others to learn from. And sometimes, yeah, realizing that that leadership's sacrifice structure is explaining that you don't have to do it the hard way. And so going to like with leadership can be is a mentoring cycle, is talking about generational trauma. To get away from generational trauma is we have to get better at each generation. And part of that comes from the exchange of hard wisdom, blunt truth, candid conversations about life, violence, and just the scope of identity. And so what that to defeat generational trauma, we have to have the conversations about these difficult things, process them in such a manner that is constructive, and hopefully the next generation gets better so they don't have to repeat it. Again, that's the whole metaphor or the statement of a wise man learns from the faults of others. And the wise man learns from the failure of others and does not repeat them. So, and what a leader does is also displays their failures and free of the ego, or free, hopefully free of the ego. I mean, you need to have a little bit of ambition because you just do to succeed in this world. But having the freedom of self to express who they are in the most genuine manner possible, saying, "Hey, this is who I am. This is the life that I have led. Um, I'm going to give this all to you, and whether you do anything about it, that's up to you. But I've done my part of saying, hey, I'm providing you the information of my life and my experiences, those hard truths, and the lessons that I learned from them, and not telling you how to do it, but saying, hey, this is the information, here's the context, here's what I did, here's what I probably should have done, and this is what occurred. What do you glean from that? Because that's another thing that I really discovered, and what I really loved about the process of which the common themes of instruction, by way of the camp, is yes, there's a template of principles of fighting that are there, but once you understood those principles, the order did it mattered in the procedural way of like the drilling and striking, but the fact is they wanted you to figure things out based upon within the limits and the parameters of those principles. Because it's one thing to tell somebody procedurally, do this task A through Z, and you're telling them how to do it, versus saying, hey, here is rules as to that are specific to that task to accomplish that goal, and here's the problem, figure it out. And that encourages growth, that encourages creativity, that encourages somebody to think outside the box. And what was great about the mentorship that was there available with the leadership team and the instructional team is these men and women were there to say, hey, here's the rules, here's the goal, here's the problem. I'm not saying like it's an actual problem, but here's the problem that we're trying to solve in this physical martial puzzle. Martial arts is that very the understanding or that connection as to the reasons why you're doing it, because it's just that different teaching styles or lack of teaching, understanding how to teach is a thing. So having the goal in mind as to what you're trying to accomplish and putting in the correct context, as what Datu Kelly was trying to explain, like in his stories, what explaining karate as how it's supposed to be. Like you want to understand how karate is used. Well, let's connect the systems and figure it out. And often enough, it's in my experience with teaching martial arts as long as I have and participating in martial arts as long as I have, there's a lot of instructors out there that tells you here's the goal, here's the problem, how to do it, and it removes the free agency of the student to be creative and problem solve their way through uh, the task at hand. And you end up with martial artists do kata or do forms and have a disconnect as to what those forms are actually intended to do, versus when you have a mentor says, hey, here's the problem set, here's the outcome and goal that we're trying to achieve, here's the parameters, the principles, and here's a set pattern, or here's a set bit of tools to operate within that structure. But I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I want to give you the freedom to explore that, but within those set parameters. And that again allows for the student the creativity and the freedom of spirit to connect the martial arts as human movement. And that's again the thing that I really appreciate about the methodology of Datu Kelly and the collective group there is that they're principles oriented, they're goal oriented, and they're not going to tell you how to do it. Because clearly they could, because the collective group experience, knowledge, and education that's there, they really could just tell you how to do it. But does but that doesn't mean you can do it. It's up to the individual to go through that process, to do it. So what I'm saying overall is, if you they are at a different level of education, a different level of martial arts education. Because too often, a lot of martial arts training and just training in general is very procedural, as in you will do this, follow along, but without any context. And seeing like the approach that the common themes of this weekend is, it's really fascinating to see their approach of using the rubric of Chinese martial arts, some karate, and some Filipino martial arts as like the lineages of tools to derive from, but expanding out furtherly to see where the principles connect all them together. That, and giving you the freedom. That's the other one too. Is reminding yourself you have the freedom to think and connect and make that work for you was also incredibly powerful and important. And it was very nice to hear that again from such men and women that had such authority in their educational backgrounds as martial artists and combat skill sets instructors. So, um, I, I don't have a studio. This is impromptu. So, um, for anybody who's hanging around, I mean, you can drop in the comments if you've got questions as to what I'm rambling about. I'm going on and on about my wonderful, amazing experiences there at Datu Kelly Warden's Water and Steel Camp there at Raft Island outside of Seattle. I was talking about how incredibly important like principle driven education is necessary for actual learning versus like procedural do this by A, B, C, and D, etc. So, and if you have any questions, drop them in there. I don't have any guests. I didn't really plan this necessarily. I was just this is my opportunity to process this weekend. And so if you have any questions, go ahead and drop in there and I'll try to address it as such. I would love to have a longer discussion about anybody's experiences at Water and Steel in the past and love to hear some stories from you. But if not, I can go on and talk more about it from my side. Because here's the other one too. What was actually really cool about uh, this weekend and like what I was able to accomplish in this process of finally making it down there because I no longer have the gym. I was able to drag Cooper along with me. So Cooper is my training partner, longtime training partner, and I was able to bring him along with. Because the other thing that I find with martial arts training is if you're starting something brand new, if you're starting a very new martial art, and especially if you're doing it remotely, because we've all have had to do that the past almost 3 years, no thanks to the pandemic and facilities closing, I've had to learn stuff online. And having the opportunity to go travel and get some information and but travel with a training partner with the, both you have the goal in mind to actually learn this content, learn these principles, and actually apply it in your training is incredibly beneficial. So I was fortunate enough that Cooper actually was able to come along with me. And what's also really interesting is I've known Cooper's been my student and training partner for almost 10 years now. And like seeing how he's progressed and seeing like his aha moments this weekend was is really interesting because as I've stated, I don't teach anything. I mean, I teach, but I don't teach. But honestly, my goal is not necessarily to teach per se from a commercial standpoint, but I like to explore so I can ask questions, so I can challenge the things that I know. Um, because at this point in my life, I think I also going back to that with the gym and the isolation, and this is just the general issue about martial arts in general, is that in the past, people were so, and this is pre internet, people were so isolated that they could kind of just do what they want without any real challenges to their authority, their education, etc. So, like the risk that we ran into up here in Alaska, especially in our little town of Homer, is if you don't actually have people come in from outside to not necessarily challenge, but to like ask questions or to verify information, or just better yet, just like have oversight. And oversight's not a bad thing. Oversight is how we like maintain a standard and have accountability. But having oversight like that frees you from actually going the way of bullshito or bullshito. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm really tired. But like having somebody externally who's part of your collective system, your collective background to check and make sure you're not actually promoting crap is important. And it's not an ego thing. It's just a reality of we have a responsibility as instructors, people who teach martial arts, coach martial arts and combat sports. We need somebody to actually say, hey, you're teaching bad doctrine, or hey, consider this, or hey, this is outdated, or even better yet, if you're teaching a curriculum-based martial art, make sure you're following the curriculum. So going down there, having a training partner who's willing to go train and learn these things, and having him and I both observe the methodology, the principles, and like the overall look and feel of what we're trying to do, helps him and I inform our training methodology moving forward. And I'm very fortunate for that to happen. And I really want, and regardless of just going to water steel, like any sort of traveling for martial art, if you have a training partner willing to go travel with you to go explore and have myriad adventures, all the better. Because when you come home, they're the person actually training with you, and the both of you can have conversations to bounce off ideas and observations and try to figure things out and see if it works for the two of you, because it's the two of you that are actually going to put in the work together if you don't have a local instructor doing the oversight, doing the observation. But I'm digressing here. But let me get to this comment here. Let's see. Hey, Shannon. What's going on, buddy? So, yeah, freedom of interpretation of fighting styles. You have to learn to deal with vast types of fighting styles. Yeah. You see people have problems when they're only taught one way. That is huge. That's a big deal. When you only have a limited expression and experience, you're only going to have that to draw from, and you run the risk of like you think you know stuff, and what you think you know is wrong. And if ego, um, and if you're subject to your ego and unwilling to learn, then will continue to perpetuate ignorance. So yeah, I'm in agreement with you. Let's see what else we got here. You see people who have problems with their own taught one way. Yep. Then you see someone who's up completely on a different pace. There's that. Yeah, everybody's got different learning styles and paces. It makes it hard for guys to adapt. Yep, I can agree to that. So freedom to learn all planes of the fight game is a key in being good at what you do. Experience is key. Oh yeah, absolutely. Experience is key. You have to have so in a metaphysical standpoint, to grow is to experience. The summation of who you are as an individual is contingent upon your experiences in life, as to like good, the bad, the ugly, your failures, your successes. So your totality of experience as a martial artist is based upon did you go do fights? Did you do different styles of martial arts training? Did you go outside of your cultural historical lineage and do something completely different? Did you do something that you started off as a hard style and went to a soft style, or back and forth? Having different approaches to martial arts by being exposed to different martial arts, one, gives you a breadth of experience of, hey, I got to see a lot of stuff. And B, it also gives you an experience of saying, hey, I got to see a bunch of different ways people do stuff. And I get to make my own inferences whether or not I like all that stuff that I saw, or I liked or did not like the stuff that I saw. Or on top of all that, I get to say and see the different teaching styles of all the different people out there, and agree or disagree whether I like it or not. So having exposure, hands-on exposure, I'll go back to this point, but having hands-on exposure of different martial arts methodologies and teaching is also really important, because there's, in an age of digital martial arts online training, you can get a feel of what a person has to say and what they have to offer in the content of the curriculum. Having digital references is huge, because you can go back and replay and actually have that videography to like go back on and look at every time as it was the same at that time. the risk of online training like that is you still got to put hands on a person to understand how to mitigate the risk of actually getting punched in the face. You got to get punched in the face, or at least have a punch thrown at your face. You can't do that in a digital medium. We can intellectually talk about it. And so, just in the same with training and education, you have to go train with different people and different instructors and different styles and methodologies to have a wider breadth of experiences, so you have a better form of opinion of those different things. So, this is where, again, back to what Water and Steel offers is the perspectives of different ages, experiences, methodologies, and lineages, martial arts lineages to draw from. Because even like the main cadre there, I mean, with uh, Professor Bob Anderson, Datu Kelly, Belton Lubis, Jeff Johnsgard, um, Charlie. I mean, you have a wide variety of different people to draw from law enforcement to combat sports and Filipino martial arts to classical historical Jeet Kune Do to Kung Fu to modern Arnis. Then also have American combatives to Kaju Kempo. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's so much in there. But the fact is, having the breadth of experience of all those instructors and their approaches to martial arts adds so much, like, things for you to consider. And each one of them focused on principles based fighting. So they were saying essentially the same things over and over and over, but reinforced it from different points of view. And that's really important for somebody who is trying to learn combat skill sets, martial arts, combatives, because it helps reinforce that. It's don't take upon the word of just one person, because the risk of what martial arts does offer is a cult mentality, a cult of personality, and worshiping the individual who is standing there telling you how to do the thing. Follow me because I'm a point of authority. What a collective group, a brotherhood of like what Water and Steelhead offers is you have, yeah, they're all saying the same thing because the principles are the truth when it comes to combat and fighting. That you have two combatants, and to win the battle space, you have to take the initiative, or to use other terms, you have to control the center, get offline, and go through that whole process of follow the principles. There's more to it, but the fact is, when they kept reinforcing the simple principles of fighting and had different approaches to do so, it helped reinforce that obviously those principles work and they're universal. So that part is important. So it back to this thing about what Water and Steel offers is that breadth of experience. So you don't get stuck into this notion and idea that what you think you know is actually the truth, because you constantly want to challenge the things that you think you know. You have to keep throwing those rocks in the pond so you don't become stagnant and subject to your ego and don't grow. So by facing a little bit of adversity, you get some resiliency. And I say adversity as in challenging your preconceived notions and challenging what you think you know, um, is good. It's growth. I mean, you have to break down muscle tissue to get stronger. You have to face and fight to get better at it. So part of that process is surrendering the ego and going saying, "Hey, I want to be a student." So with that, what I really loved about being there is I actually got to hang out and be a student. I have I didn't shoot any video. I mean, I have a couple of quick videos, but I really did not sit there behind the camera documenting stuff, which was incredibly freeing because I didn't want to go there as like, hey, I am some social media dude and videotaping my experience, because I wanted to have the experience. I wanted to be there in the dirt, drilling and sharing in the collective information and education. I wanted to participate. That's huge, because I could not participate if I was hiding behind my stupid camera. So it helped a lot, reinvigorate that beautiful journey, that beautiful feeling of starting something new and going through that process of learning. And for somebody who's been in the martial arts like I have been, not saying that I've been in there forever like some other people, but I've been in there, I've been in the martial arts a long time. and done a lot of martial arts. And it's nice to start over. It's nice to start again and something new because I'm excited about this. I'm exhausted, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the what the martial arts world has to offer for me outside of what I have done in the past, seeing what I can do with it into the future, and see how those two things marry up to each other and work well with each other. Or better yet, I would like to see where what I think I know comes into conflict with what I'm learning and see how I can reconcile that to make it work for me, for my process, my experience. And yeah, so like going to things like this is really important. Yeah, the Buddha brothers definitely documented everything. And yeah, Eric was awesome. He's a very unique individual, as in like that his level of energy was uh was exciting. It was his level of energy was something that I really enjoyed just observing because he was just a pleasant human being that was excited for everybody. And I'm glad he was there. And I'm glad he was able to document it for all of us because, for the sake of me who wanted to participate, I didn't have to worry about having my camera out there. I actually got to do the thing. And I'm happy about that. I'm glad he was able to do it. But more so, I want to actually just be there. I want to soak up the experience. I want to actually get in the dirt and play and actually just like get messy and get involved with this because the fact is I want to learn, and having that excitement to learn, I haven't had that in a long time, especially after uh, everything that occurred to me and everything's that I did to my own self and my self sabotaging. And now this is giving me the opportunity to grow beyond that post traumatic growth after all that. And so I'm very grateful to have finally the time and opportunity and the means to go participate in these things and actually get to be a student again. I actually get to network with my peers, my betters, my seniors, and people that I generally have been looking up to and fanboying for a long time. Because let's face it, I, I put it out there, FMA nerd, and more importantly, like martial arts nerd. I've been in the martial arts so long because I love this stuff, and I'm a big nerd about it. I'm going to sit here and just like nerd out on it. And part of that nerding out is like I get the fanboy like people that I look up to. And that's perfectly okay. For any martial arts practitioner out there, it is great to be a nerd. It is great to fanboy those who you look up to. Because one, it should be a point of inspiration, and two, it's cool to meet cool people. I was so excited to meet a whole bunch of new people and get to know them and have them get to know me. Rubber chickens there, everything. So by the way, Paulo, if you're lurking in there anyway, say hi. But yeah, you're a funny dude. Paulo, are you there? Oh, either way. But yeah, Paulo, you're a funny man. Having a brown man go to a black man to go to a brown man to create a circumstance, to create a situation, that's fucking hilarious. You're hilarious. I got you. You're a funny man. But yeah, but better yet, as a result of that, I got to make a really cool friend. I got to meet all sorts of really cool friends, and I'm glad to have met them and actually create this bond that I look forward to growing with them over the course of the year and building that relationship, that network, and seeing each other the year after. Again, martial arts is a big part of traveling to these gatherings is like coming home in a lot of ways. And I'm not trying to like create a new family, but it does create a new family in a lot of ways, or a family dynamic of like I get to hang out with my friends. I just get to hang out with my friends and hit them with stuff, and they hit me too. So it's bonding through violence. So I mean that's what we do. What's up, Errol? Um, yeah. Let's see what else was going on there. Things that I really some stuff that challenged me. So for a lot of people who, I mean, some people know this. I mean, a lot of people know this, but the things that challenge me, especially after dealing with what I deal with, health and medical wise. So I am fully medically retired, disabled, because of traumatic brain injury. I got punched in the face for way too many times for way too long, and I fought in the wrong weight class and did a lot of stupid things that put a lot of damage to my brain. I I was forced to stop fighting. I was forced to stop doing a lot of the stuff that I loved to do because I was avoiding the warranty and breaking myself down to a point of catastrophe. So, with a traumatic brain injury, I no longer can box. At nearly 40, I probably shouldn't box. And it's not because, like, you shouldn't because it's bad. It's like I started boxing and fighting when I was 8 years old. Got my first serious concussion at 8 years old and just continued thereon. So, my brain, I have to maintain it, but I adjust. And so, like, the things that challenged me and the things that challenge me now is I have some short-term memory loss issues, like me maintaining sequential order, maintaining procedural groupings of immediate information. Very simply, I have a hard time with sequential taskings, like doing things by the numbers, and only been introduced to those things 30 seconds prior and then expected to repeat. So choreography or drilling, it takes me a long time to figure that out because I have to understand the base principle. I rely on the base principles first to make a connection, try to marry it up to physical skill sets and background that I already have, and then trying to figure out if I can apply that to the curriculum and the doctrine that I'm learning. Because doing things by the numbers is really hard for me at this point in my life because I just have a hard time remembering things that quick, or that quick as in like it just quickly happened just there. So that's something that I deal with. So like the challenges that I ran into is following the patterns if they're brand new patterns and not overriding it with stuff that I'm already comfortable with and used to doing, and it's already there because of just motor memory connection or that myelination, those training scars. So I have to challenge the preconceived things that I think I know, those pre-learned patterns of movement based upon experience, and then marry them up to, or better yet, reframe those patterns of movement that are already there. It's just figuring out the order of which to do them. That's the hard part. Because like I'm going to switch gears. Talk about Belinta walk here. One sec. Like I said, this is impromptu. I have a daughter out roaming around, so there's that fun. So again, things that I run into in dealing with Belinta walk. So I've been learning Belinta walk, trying to learn Belinta walk for a couple of years now, and I've been putting off testing for a while because I wanted to do proof of concept that I could learn new curriculum and not let my previous experience and preferences and body mechanics override what I'm trying to learn and lose that flavor, that style, and that sequence, and fall back to the things that I do like and have experienced in, and actually prove the concept that I can actually learn a new thing and stay within the confines of the rules, parameters, stylistic features, and sequences of that new thing. So long story short, I'll post it a little bit later, but I tested for level 1. I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot of cleanup to do, but I passed. I got level 1. I'm no longer level 0 in Tabuada, Balintawaka, Eskrima. So I have a lot of work before next year for West Coast before I test again for level 2. But I got level 1 done. Yay. So huzzah. For me, it's hard because again, it was hard for me not to override and like fall into like the other stuff that I do and actually stay within the lane of Belinta walk. On top of all that, like learning new body positions is hard when I default to stuff that I just do because of injury preference and experience, and better yet, just like misunderstanding. It's like making those neural connections as to, hey, you should do this. Somebody's telling you that, but I don't have enough time and experience to figure out what the right position feels like because I just haven't done it enough. I haven't created enough myelination and training scars to make that actually work. So back to how that works with like some of the difficulties that I ran into with this weekend is like some of the sequential patterns. So things that I that worked for me is when I put it in the rubric of what is the principle. When I looked at when I can't figure out the follow along with the pattern, follow along with the sequences, I looked at what are the base principles. What are the things I'm trying to accomplish to deal with this situation? So in the case of like dealing with what I would call targets of opportunity by creating them or creating targets based upon response of striking, when there's the Dirty Dozen, which is a phenomenal name and which is a phenomenal sequence of striking based upon responses. If you can, based upon the principle, if I hit you here to create a reaction here, then continue on with that strike and misdirection, once you use that principle, it ends up being like a combative creative process to figure out, okay, I may not have the sequence correct, but if I create a stimulus, I get a response and just continue on with that. Now, the techniques, that takes time to learn that curriculum. But the principles, if one understands fighting and has experience in fighting, they can make connection to those principles and apply them um, as a bridging tool to make up for the gap of the curriculum base. Now, I'm not saying that it's good enough. It is a way to bridge while you learn new stuff, but it is the challenge of somebody coming in like me, coming in learning a whole new approach, a whole new pattern structure, a whole new procedural path of I need to challenge the things that I think I know and things that I've done and actually learn something new. It's possible, it's hard, but it's definitely worthwhile. Again, rebirth. So hopefully, actually not hopefully, my challenge is I'm going to do it. I'm making the decision because hope, there's a possibility for failure and it just leaves out for chance. I'm going to do it. I'm putting the task and I'm going to figure out the sequence and I'm going to do it, just like I'm doing with Balloon Talk. I'm going to figure out the sequence and just do it. So, and that is my challenge for anybody who wants to go do something new. I mean, you have the right to do either, but the fact is, if you're going to go do something, go do it. My suggestion as to if you're going to go to a place like Water and Steel, embrace it, take it all in, because what is what prevents people from learning is ego. What prevents people from learning is like their unwillingness to be uncomfortable with their knowledge base and accepting the fact that they may be deficient. That's an ego thing as well, or challenging what they think uh, works for them, because if it works for you, that's great, but you still have to figure out the curriculum as well. You can't just rely on what you think you can do, what you have done. To grow, you have to experience new stuff. So learn the new stuff, embrace the new stuff, and follow along and figure it out. But in the case of like with Water and Steel, I got to be a sponge. I got to go sit there and just not sit there. I participated, sweat and all of it, and was trying to soak up as much as I could from my time there. And again, as much as I'm physically sore, that's not actually the issue. My biggest issue here is like travel sucks. I mean, I was 12 hours of travel just this morning, but I'm intellectually fatigued. I am just like my brain is just has taken in so much data, new information, new concepts, reinforcing some old concepts and reframing others that I'm just like, I am tired. Not like I'm exhausted, and it's the good kind. And for anybody who's started anything new, you know what I'm talking about. So my suggestion, my challenge to you is go do something difficult like that challenges you not just physically, because physically that's a fatigue thing, that's physical capability, but like intellectually challenge your ideas, your principles, your approaches, the things, and better yet, your ego. Go do that because it's good for you and it creates growth. So not sure what else can go on about this. I've been going at it for about an hour. If anybody's got any comments or questions, go ahead and pop in. I know there's a few of you hanging out here. Datu Kelly, you've been here. Datu Kelly, I'll get a hold of you and we can pull you on the show whenever you are good and ready. I know your schedule's fairly busy, and yeah, Errol, I'll get you on here soon as well. But yeah, anybody else wants to throw something out there, I'll be curious to, or I'm happy to sit here and chat. Again, this is just me like impromptu and decompressing. Um, but yeah, I had a great time. I think Cooper did too. We have some stuff we got to work on. Definitely a lot of stuff we got to work on. So, yeah. Oh, the other thing, which the other part would occur this weekend is I am a junior apprentice instructor underneath Belton, and he put me on the spot to do like impromptu like hip pocket training, which was interesting. I'm glad I had the opportunity to do so, and yeah, it was the thing that I ran into, and actually this is a good one to pontificate on. I don't teach necessarily anymore. I do a lot of play. I do a lot of exploration. I ask questions. My point and my process at this point in my life when it comes to martial arts is I want to ask questions. I want to, because questions helps stimulate growth. It helps people think on their own if they're actually listening. If me asking a question, and if it comes to a point of conflict, whether or not it challenges your belief, it confirms your belief, or better yet, it doesn't do anything for you. It does something. You got to throw rocks in the pond. So what I do now in my martial arts, often enough with like FMA, I tag in the majority of my videos as, is it FMA? Because the question creates a response. In this case, like at this point in my life with it, is I just ask hard questions, and I'm asking it's and I share them with the public, but I'm really asking hard questions of myself based upon the doctrine and education that I grew up with the martial arts, my experiences, and also just like things I figured out. I'm trying to challenge those things. So what I presented for this weekend was not necessarily the flashiest of things, and it wasn't necessarily a great sequence of martial skill and drilling, nor was it like me going on about my list of merit badges as a martial artist, professional and otherwise. What I did is my goal was to talk about 4 principles, propose a question, and see what happens. Because the thing that I actually really took away from this weekend is giving a person the freedom to process and be creative and figure things out for their own body type, their natural body and spirit, within the rubric, the framework of good fighting principles. So telling somebody how to do something does not help them to learn necessarily, not well at least. You can tell somebody how to do it, but it's procedural, and it's not necessarily they'll actually internalize it and make it their own. Now, showing them and guiding them along and mentoring them, that's also another level of learning. The one that is where I'm at in my life now is I ask a question, be creative, and figure it out. Now, yeah, there's some tactical and technical points where the result of a person answering the question may be technically and tactically wrong, but the fact they're making the effort to answer the question is actually the whole point of the exercise, and the point of like the lesson there. So I at this point talk about creativity, both combative and criminal creativity. And I'm going to talk about criminal creativity, as we have some funny axioms and metaphors and statements in martial arts, combat skills, and just tradecraft that if we don't think about them, we say them, but do we actually think about them? One of them, in the case of like personal protection, self-defense, is you should have a plan to kill every man in the room. And it's interesting as to like, for one, people find that so abhorrent. They're like, why would I have a plan to kill every man in the room? That's wrong, which it is in a lot of ways. But if your job is to do that, is it wrong? So that's the thing to think about. Now, to understand like the criminal mind, to understand how to deal with the criminal mind, you should think like a criminal on occasion if that's your job. Because when you're doing it from the lens of authority, such as by the lens of your badge, by the lens of your oath, you have certain preconceived, uh, you have certain filters that you process that through. But like to truly understand and to use the mental exercise of being creatively or criminal creativity, think about how they think. That is very, you have a better understanding of like what they do and why they do it, so you have a better understanding of how to deal with it, respond to it, and know what you're looking for. So criminal creativity is a good thought experiment, and I suggested it this weekend, and that's something I hope I can share more with the NSI community, and just in general. Is again is the stuff that I like to think and I like to talk about and process, because in my experiences in martial arts has to deal with why we fight. I'm trying to figure out violence. I'm trying to figure out, from the case of like the institutional, educational, generational violence that is particular to my family, the family I was adopted into, and all their military martial arts service and all that combat and warfare, and then trying to figure out violence from the standpoint of when I was homeless, doing gang activity and doing some criminal shit, and also trying to understand violence from the case of a professional who does it as a job, either as a soldier, as law enforcement, as people who do it by badge and oath, and also trying to understand violence from the sake of how do we teach it to protect those community social groups that are protected, such as our wives, our daughters, our children. So trying to understand that factor, and on top of all that, trying to understand violence as a currency and identity and value. So like my questions overall, the in this stage of my martial arts journey is why we fight, to understand violence. So part of that trying to understand violence is part of my process is understanding the creative criminal mindset. So, by understanding that, by having done some of it, worked with a lot of people who have done a lot of it, and dealing with people that are procedurally do it by badge and by oath, and how they filter and view it, it is important to see the mindset and look through the mindset of those who are on the other side of the fence, so you can better understand how they're going to utilize it, and so you can defend against it. And that's my argument for having a creatively criminal mindset as a thought experiment. Not saying you should do it all the time, because thoughts lead to action, but for the case of an educational process, it's a good thing to think about. It's a good thing because if you're going to be an expert in a thing, you need to think about the entire aspects of it. You should not, there's no forbidden knowledge. Forbidden knowledge is bullshit. I'm just going to flat out say it again. Forbidden knowledge is bullshit, because knowledge is what frees us from ignorance, arrogance, and fear. So think about stuff, educate yourself, and free yourself from those things. And on top of all that, to free some of those dogmatic practices because of the specific filters of a badge and an oath. Because again, criminals and the enemy don't follow the rules, but you have to because of badge and an oath. But to better understand what they're going to do, you got to think like they do. And again, this is all lip service, but this is what I have to offer these days is my mind, or what's left of it, and the things that I think about. And I'm hoping that at this point now that I have had the opportunity to slow down and not take impact and have to deal with classes and coaching, that I can share my thoughts and my pontification about these things, because I don't need to hold mitts for anybody anymore. I like to. I don't need to babysit children and attempt to teach them martial arts. I don't need to deal with the social drama of people trying to figure themselves out through whatever social issue necessarily anymore. What I can do is offer my time, my experience, my expression, and the things that I think about. And what I hope to offer with the NSI community is the things that I think about. And maybe there might be some value in it. So, I've been rambling at this for a while. Paulo, if you're in here, say hello, because I have a rubber chicken for you. He still hasn't come in here. Oh well. Anyways, yeah, I've been at this for about an hour. This was an impromptu thing. Uh, Other than me and my rubber chicken, you guys are my guests. This was really supposed to be I don't know what this was supposed to be about. I just really want to decompress and talk about stuff that I've been thinking about now that I'm like trying to relax because yeah, I'm exhausted, but it's a good kind of exhausted. And I'm really looking forward to next year. I really am because yeah, it's like this is my Christmas going down south to Seattle and reintegrating with the tribe. This is what I look forward to. So, yeah, I'll hang out here for a little bit longer. If anybody's got any questions, um, let me talk about my schedule coming up here for podcasting episodes. So this weekend on the Fight House Talks podcast, uh, Guru O'Brien has an interview with what's his name, DMAC Ahmed. I gotta get. I'll figure out the time on when that's going to occur. Uh, Apparently, he is a CLAT practitioner. This guest, and Brian's going to be leading the interview on that. I'm going to be running technical for it, so that's going to be this weekend. I have a guest on September 11th. Actually, one of my former officers that I worked underneath while I was on active duty. His name is Justin Heinzen. We're going to be talking about some veteran stuff because that's actually a whole other topic and talk about water and steel if I have some time. On the 16th, we have Jamie Aguilar, another phenomenal FMA practitioner. Let's see what else do we got going on this month. And yeah, I have something going on here at the end of the month with another FMA-Nerd. So look for those flyers. But yeah, so September 11th is coming up. Just put that out there. 20 Years of War, which I didn't get to participate in because the universe had another goal and plan for me, which is fine. But yeah, my podcast on September 11th, I'll be talking to Justin Heinzen, who is my former platoon leader while I was on active duty. Yeah, we're just gonna be talking about some veteran stuff, and was actually so switching gears as to what Water and Steel does. So Water and Steel, there are so many veterans there, so many veterans that are actually processing and succeeding and becoming better because like the veteran community we eat ourselves alive. We are not very good to ourselves. Veterans, as much as we talk about the brotherhood and whatnot, when we're bonded through trauma, we can be very strong, but we also have some trauma within ourselves that deals with a toxic community, and we don't want to play well with others, and let alone be with those that remind us of that toxic situation, that toxic community. I actually have veteran friends that they were my closest homies when I was on active duty and when I was in the guard and everything else, that we don't talk anymore because we came to the agreement that if all we're going to talk about is the things that we hate about the military, then and not talk about the things that we're doing now and moving forward, then why the fuck are we talking? Because it's not growth. It's not post-traumatic growth. It's just not growth in general. So we're constantly looking in the rearview mirror and staying there. That's not healthy. So a lot of my veteran friends in that regard, I don't talk to those guys anymore. But for the veterans that do move forward, move past that conditional love set identity issue, those guys and gals are amazing human beings. Not saying anybody else isn't, but it is really encouraging for a veteran that is trying to figure out their identity as a veteran who served in a time of war, who actually never made it to the sandbox. Trying to figure that out is tricky. But what I was encouraged with this weekend is actually the amount of veterans uh, that were there and actually celebrating the life of a veteran that passed in connection to the collective community. Um, I never met him, but we had an opportunity to give a send off and goodbye to I believe his name was Jason Little. He was a U.S. Army Ranger, I believe, that was attached to the group. Datu Kelly could correct me on this, but we had a lovely little memoriam for him. It was beautiful and powerful to be witness to. And I got to speak with his parents and meet them. And again, that was very powerful and beautiful to share in. And what was encouraging is, again, like I'm of the belief that the dead are truly dead when they're no longer spoken about, and their names and their deeds and their stories are no longer told. And what was great, I'm not saying great, but one of the things that's just very poignant about my observations with that community is they got to share their stories for a little bit. And there's a little side conversations and comments and things stated about what that individual meant to the group. That was powerful and beautiful to witness. And I'm reminded when I do come around other veterans of that bond is powerful and beautiful. And I was very grateful to have that shared into that special bit of life. So now what's encouraging about Water and Steel is there is that brotherhood, that positive brotherhood. Those pockets of positive brotherhood still exist uh, in this world, and actually we need more of them, to be honest, because veterans coming out of service are so isolated. I mean, isolation is what kills us in the long run. I mean, that sense of being alone has been an issue for me up here, and this is why going down there is so important. So what one of the things that let's talk about veteran groups and veteran programs. So what my daughter's roaming around. So positive veteran programs. There's a lot of veteran programs out there that do a lot of interesting things. Some of them are good, some of them are great, some of them suck. But though, and I've had experiences with the wide gambit. But with Water and Steel, just thinking about it as a veteran program. Okay, we'll just go that lane because I don't know if it is officially part of the charter, uh, but I, it can be. I don't know if it is. Dr. Kelly or some of the leadership can correct me on it, but from observation, somebody new, Water and Steel in essence has a very strong veteran presence because I mean the fact is Datu Kelly worked with First Group, so the First Special Forces Group based out of Fort Lewis, Washington. There, um, Professor Bob Anderson is a veteran. I mean, there's a lot of veterans in that group themselves. But my point being is that as for veteran programs, they're available. Water and Steel as a martial arts is like a collective tribal community group that shares through that bonds through a shared experience. And we'll say shared experience through like collective training, education, sharing a meal, sharing stories. That's healthy because they're doing it for the betterment of the group collective rather than just being stuck, getting drunk, talking about the glory days and not actually doing something constructive. And this weekend, we did a lot of stuff that was constructive. I mean, the fact that you had 30, I think 40 people there actually putting in work together. I mean, there was no ego, there was no conflicts, there was no like concern about am I looking good, am I looking bad. There was no concern about like that internal process of all the individuals' neuroses. It was just what I observed, not being able to read people's minds. What about I would observe is people were actually able to be mindful and present. And for the veterans there, I mean, they were their body. You could tell who the Marines were by the flavor of crayons coming out of the back pocket. You could tell who the Air Force guys were there. I mean, I got to meet a former fighter pilot, and he was awesome. Of course, you get to meet the smattering of Army guys. There's a couple of Navy guys. I mean, you could tell. I mean, veterans can sniff each other out. We just do, and that was really cool because you get to see a group of veterans actually drilling, playing, and actually being better, and that post-traumatic growth is so incredibly important, especially after 20 years of war, and having places like Water and Steel is a good place to like put purpose behind a lot of pain and reshape, reform. And again, like back to this thing, what Datu Kelly said in his own words, we all experience rebirth. And that comes from one, being present and mindful enough to actually commit to an action, having the courage, the bravery to actually go do the thing, face that adversity, and also like having the mindfulness and the presence of mind to like embrace it and actually be there. And for the better of it, like you don't have time to think about stuff because you're doing stuff, and that's great. I mean, yeah. So as advocating for veteran activities, I'm going to highly suggest veterans go check out Water and Steel. It's yeah, it's hard to describe, and it's intrinsic to the individual. But the fact is that it is a great option. So yeah, I've been at this for a while now, and yeah, I think I've processed through what I was planning to process, and if there's more crap that comes spewing out of my brain hole, I'll do something later. But reality is, I yeah, I think I'm good. Anybody have any questions, comments? I know there's a few of you hanging out here. If not, feel free to like, share. I'll hit the buttons, do the stuff. Help me out with this channel. Help me out with the other YouTube channel. Just I like to tell stories, like to share stories, and like to share my mind. And I would love to hear your guys' stories. So if you want to come on as a guest, just get a hold of me, and I would love to hang out with you and just have a cool conversation. Because reality is, that's really what I do with this podcast is I just ask questions and we have cool conversations. So if anybody has a suggestion of somebody that they want on the show, put them in the comments, tag them, whatever, get a hold of me. I would love to have a great conversation with you about whatever. It doesn't have to be FMA related. We can just talk about whatever and get to know a cool person and maybe learn some cool stuff about them and what they do. So without any further ado, I'm going to get off of here. So anybody else? 3, 2, 1, nothing? Okay. Well, everybody have a wonderful rest of your Labor Day, and I will see everybody in the comments and later as I try to figure out how to do this with awkward silence and turn this thing off. But yeah, later, everybody.